Is that an open season poster on your wall? Kid? What the fuck? Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year. The time for presents, trees, and lights. Those classic animated specials. Yes, even the curse of 2020 can't seem to stop the Christmas spirit. Mainly because we're celebrating the fact that it's finally over. But yes! Christmas is that magical time of year where everybody just can't seem to get enough of it. Children, adults, greedy companies ready to exploit the Christmas rush. Who doesn't love this time of year? I mean, 2020 probably doesn't love it, but who cares? It's almost over, so how about we celebrate being liberated from this awful year by watching a Christmas masterpiece that I'm sure you probably heard of? Maybe? Arthur Christmas! Yep, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Genuinely a great movie, Arthur Christmas. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there probably have never heard of this movie, or if you have, then you simply saw the trailer and probably that Justin Bieber song that came with it, and decided, nah, this movie looks weird. Also, the main character looks like Jacob Haddock in an ugly Christmas sweater. It looks awful. And honestly, I thought the same exact thing at first. But I remember back in 2011 when the movie was in theaters, my mom and I went and saw it because, well, my mom thought I would like it, and this is one of the cases where I thought I was going to hate it, but I left the theater absolutely loving it by the end. But as a simple 16-year-old boy at the time, I didn't fully understand why I loved it. The animation was amazing, the characters seemed likable enough, there were some good jokes here and there. I didn't think it was amazing at first, I thought it was just fine, so I pretty much went on with my life, paying the movie no more heed. And I think that's how a lot of people reacted to the movie because it didn't make a lot of money in its initial release. Oof. Not Treasure Planet bad, but definitely an unfortunate failure. It wasn't until a few years later, after watching it a second time, when it just so happened to air on TV at the time, that suddenly I found a new appreciation for it. I laughed at funnier jokes that I didn't even remember seeing in the theater. I realized that the script was surprisingly very witty and had a ton of in-jokes in there.
Field elves jingle! Jingle, jingle!
You're gonna make it, soldier.
Our hoose is merry!
That's a wrap for Denmark.
Converting milk and cookies to biofuel.
And look! Shaun the Sheep is in the movie! I bet you didn't know that! You're welcome. But I think what really caught me off guard with this movie was how brilliantly written these characters were. These are some of the most interesting, well-developed, understandable, and relatable characters I've ever seen in a Christmas movie, if any movie at all. First, you have an amazing cast that you probably would have never recognized at first sight. Whatever, you get it. You have Charles Xavier as our lead. You have Dr. House as Steve. Umbridge as Mrs. Claus. You even have Joan Cusack and Andy Serkis having cameos as elves. Like, seriously, I had no idea they were even there! This is how voice acting should be done in an animated movie. I didn't recognize a single voice in this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I love hearing voices that I recognize sometimes, but that also comes with the curse of taking you out of whatever you're watching, even if the voice acting is superb. This is one of those movies that, along with having a simple story and layout, can surprisingly be very thought-provoking too. The story of the movie is this. In the world of Arthur Christmas, Santa is less of a person and more of a simple figurehead. There have been many Santas over the years, and the current Santa, actually named Malcolm, has been doing the job for 70 years and is expected to retire this year. He is also expected to pass the reins over to his oldest son, Steve, who is the one who actually does all the work behind the scenes. But to everybody's shock, Malcolm decides not to retire and instead to hang on to the coat for another year, despite the fact that he's getting old, tired, and honestly doesn't do that much in terms of the job. Along with that, you also have Grand Santa, the Santa before Malcolm, who is even older and bitter over how modernized Christmas has become over the years. And don't ask how they have a giant airship that can travel 10 times faster than the speed of light. They just have it. It's Santa. Christmas magic, whatever! So Grand Santa believes that Christmas doesn't need all the fancy technology to get Christmas done, while Steve believes that the old ways are outdated and useless. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh god, really? This old fight? Come on, we all know that the old traditional way is gonna win, and it actually doesn't win? The movie points out that being outdated is actually a bad thing? Huh. Okay, so I guess the modern day wins then instead. All that fancy technology and the large crew all working together at once, and no, that doesn't exactly win either. The spirit of Christmas has been lost, and Steve simply sees it as a business and doesn't seem to be bothered when a child has been missed. Oh, okay, so Steve's the bad guy, right? He only cares about the power and wants to be Santa Claus and will do whatever it takes to get it, right? Actually, no, he's not. Okay, then it's Grand Santa. He puts the whole operation at risk all because he wanted to prove a point that he couldn't, right? No, he's not a villain either. Oh, well then, okay, I give up. Who is the villain of this movie? The answer is nobody. There is no direct villain. Only people who believe in what they know and are too stubborn to accept each other. And the brilliant thing about this movie is that in honesty, everybody has a good point to make. No side is exactly right, but they're also not wrong either. Steve feels entitled to becoming Santa because he does all the work behind the scenes. He runs the entire operation kind of like a general, referring to the elves as soldiers, creating all this fancy tech. Christmas, under him, is run like a military operation. And when you think about it, that kind of makes sense to do. In a modern world with 7 billion people, modern tech like security cameras, fighter drones, and so on, treating it like a Black Ops mission makes perfect sense. You've gotta be stealthy, you've gotta be quick and agile, and again, with 7 billion people on the planet, you're gonna need help. That's why we see the elves also deliver presents alongside Santa Claus. Then you have Grand Santa, who feels entitled to becoming Santa again because he feels like it was robbed from him. His final official year as Santa was 1941 during World War II, and after a bad operation, he was kind of forced to pass the reins down to Malcolm. But it doesn't end there, because it turns out Grand Santa actually tried to steal the role back before in 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And apparently because of his actions, he almost directly caused World War III. That was when Steve and Malcolm decided enough was enough. So you have Steve, who feels entitled to the role because he does all the work, and Grand Santa, who feels entitled to the role because he felt like it was stolen from him. And while all that's going on, you have Malcolm, the current Santa, who is hesitant to give up on the role because he feels like he wouldn't be anyone without it.
Christmas has become such a mad rush.
Until you retire.
Retire? Who would I be?
So it's kind of funny when you realize that the big question that the movie wants to ask you is not who is Santa Claus, but what is Santa Claus?
I'll do you one better.
Why is Santa Claus? This all ties into the theme of identity, a theme I never thought would come from a movie where the main character acts like this.
Knalis again, you lot again, lasim lak, lasis the gerb.
Malcolm is secretly terrified of losing his role because he doesn't know who he will be without it. He's also afraid to admit the truth that in actuality, he's not really that important. When Grand Santa calls him a simple figurehead, he's actually not that far off from the truth. Steve does all the work, while Malcolm simply kinda just listens to his orders, follows along, and just waits for the signal to put one single present down, and boom! Christmas is accomplished, bust out the eggnog, time to make out and shit. But when a present isn't delivered due to a work accident, Steve, being the one who does all the work, immediately gets blamed for it, despite the fact that it's Santa's operation. This basically ruffles Steve's jimmies even more because technically it is his fault, but instead, still salty about not becoming Santa this year, he instead tries to focus on everything he did right, even boasting about having possibly the single most successful Christmas in Santa history, despite this single mistake. Again, this all comes to the characters' insecurities about their identities and how much the role of being Santa Claus means to them. Malcolm honestly doesn't have that much of a right to call out Steve for this error since he doesn't do much in the grand scheme of things, but since he believes so strongly that this is who he's supposed to be, he does it anyway. Steve, on the other hand, simply wants to be appreciated by his father, who he believes passed him over wrongfully. So despite the situation actually being easily very fixable, both Malcolm and Steve are just so stuck up their own butts that they can't and won't get it done. This is where Grand Santa takes advantage of the situation and decides to show both of them how it's done. But of course, in a modern world with modern technology, using old things like a paper map which is outdated and an old wooden sleigh, it's not going to go the way he plans. Despite all of their mistakes though, you never truly believe any of them is trying to ruin Christmas. Maybe spite each other and gloat about it, sure, but not ruin Christmas. If anything, in their own weird way, they're simply trying to make it better. It just so happens that both sides have flaws that neither of them will acknowledge. Grand Santa can't admit he's getting too old, Steve can't admit his tech made a mistake, and Malcolm can't admit that his time as Santa is over. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Malcolm goes into the mailroom where Arthur works and reads some of the letters that Arthur wrote about him. And as the words are read aloud to the audience, you can see the realization on his face that he's nothing like that at all. In honesty, he's probably the most useless Santa that Christmas has ever seen, and as he begins to realize this, that's when he decides to make himself actually useful and try to deliver the present in the end. Meanwhile, Grand Santa, after screwing up for the 100th time on the mission, realizes too that his son and grandson had a point. It wasn't about stealing the role, he really was just becoming outdated, and in a modern world, his old way of doing things just doesn't work anymore. And in the end, he's able to accept that the new ways have their advantages. But what about Steve? What does he learn in all of this? Well, to talk about that, it's time to talk about the main character of Arthur Christmas. Arthur, at first glance, is kind of your typical awkward young adult who's clumsy, but overall has a good heart. But the cool thing about Arthur is that the clumsiness never really overstays its welcome. He's not just a running gag or comic relief character, he's actually a character, and you can see that throughout the film. He's actually very self-conscious about his clumsiness. He overhears people make fun of him and knows that his family, particularly his brother, tends to just overlook him sometimes. Despite that, however, he tries to be the glue that holds them together. When they're playing a board game at dinner, he tries to tell jokes or offer a compromise in order to diffuse the tension. But again, he's simply overlooked because, hey, we're talking about what's really important here, who's gonna become Santa Claus. Despite Arthur's efforts though, he still tries to be very optimistic and has hope that it'll all work out so long as everyone's happy. This is what makes Arthur such an enduring character, even when he tries to be funny, which, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think he's that funny. Yeah, that's probably the one weakness he has, and that's when they try to play him up as a goofball. It doesn't always work for me. It's not bad, just kinda standard, and again, the good stuff definitely makes up for it. Arthur is meant to represent the kind nature of Santa Claus, the giving unto others and making sure that every child is happy. That's all Arthur really wants at the end of the day. He doesn't care about how it gets done, just as long as it does. For Arthur, it's not about the science or the tradition, it's simply trying to make Christmas special for every child. He actually becomes really upset when he finds out Grand Santa only went with him to prove a point, and when he believes his father simply went to bed and gave up. But it's his determination in trying to deliver the present that helps bring everyone back together, even if it is, again, simply to prove who's better. But when Arthur finally snaps them out of it, Malcolm actually makes a very good point.
Oh, Santa brought me the bike I wanted.
Steve, you deserve to be Santa. But Steve, I wonder if Gwen is right.
Arthur has the heart of Christmas, the one thing that's been forgotten about by all of them. And no amount of tradition or tech can make up for that. Steve may be talented and smart, but he doesn't have that heart in him. He can try till the cows come home, but when it's not there, it's not there. Steve believed that if he became Santa, he would receive the recognition he never got before. But after seeing Arthur bring everyone together and help them overcome their flaws, Steve decides to pass the torch down to his brother. In the end, the movie was about three people from three different walks of life, the past, the present, and the future, all fighting over an identity that they thought would fix their problems. But thanks to Arthur and his unrelenting wish to make Christmas perfect for everyone, they realized that what they were searching for wasn't in a red suit, rather it was with each other. And I think that is what makes this movie so brilliant in the end. There's no villain, no plan to sabotage Christmas or anything, it's just people trying to figure themselves out. All while at the same time, you have gorgeous animation, incredible speed and energy, great humor, even if some jokes do miss every once in a while, and an incredible, fun, smart script that tried way harder than it had to. Arthur Christmas isn't just a well-made Christmas movie, it's probably the smartest Christmas movie ever made. It honestly kind of sucks that this movie didn't get the love that it deserved in theaters, but at least it's getting more recognition over time. It's kind of like Steve from the movie. Not appreciated at first, but over time, it got exactly what it wanted. The only issues that I have with the movie is, again, sometimes the jokes don't land. Again, it's not bad, just kind of standard kids movie stuff sometimes. I'd say out of all the jokes, about 2 out of 10 don't land for me, but that's just me personally. Also, yeah, Arthur's character design is really just Hiccup, only more awkward looking. I know the time gap between these two movies isn't really that big, but I'm sorry, it's just really distracting for me, I'm sorry. I'm also not a fan of the elves' designs. There's just something about their small eyes on those big heads that really doesn't look right to me. They never look like they can properly emote, which is a real shame because they get some pretty damn funny lines sometimes.
That's the girl that Santa hates!
She runs away, alcoholic by the age of 9, dead before she's even...
Also, there's this subplot about aliens, and yeah, that's honestly kind of pointless, and you could have written it out of the movie and not much would change, but to be fair, it's not in the movie for that long, so again, it's almost like it's not even there at all. But yeah, other than that, it's fantastic. If you haven't watched Arthur Christmas yet, then you are missing out on a beautifully animated and wonderfully written movie. I highly recommend it for this holiday season and any other holiday season. Check it out and report back to Slay 1 for further orders. So, 2020. Hell of a year, wasn't it? What with the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, the racial tension and the rioting, the threats of World War III looming over our heads since day freaking one, and not to mention one of the most, if not the most, consequential election the US has ever seen. And not to mention, a lot of people didn't get to see the end of it. But I want to try to end this year on a high note. I mean, a lot of good things did happen too. For example, my channel actually doubled in subscriber count thanks to a little blue alien. Also, I started a new channel named RaisorBlade Alive where I get to go out and do fun stuff with my friends, which you should totally check out. Go on. Do it. Now, I know that might not sound great to some people, but for me, it truly means the world that I have so many wonderful people supporting me. Not to mention that I got to work with some amazing people this year, like Jen Long and Brandon again. 2020 may not have been the perfect year, in fact, it was far from it, but I'm sure it can't get any worse, right? Oh God, please don't quote me if 2021 ends up being worse. But I say, keep your chin up. Be the candle in someone else's life. Help others when you can, and don't be afraid to leave your comfort zone. If you want 2021 to be a better year, you have to make it a better year. A vaccine for the Backstreet Boys reunion tour has been dispatched. We have a new president that's going to be sworn into office soon. And coming next year, I have an amazing adventure waiting for you on the Alive channel. So again, you should go check it out. Do it. It's a new year, which means new possibilities. And I can't wait to share them with you. Whether it's reviewing movies, going off on adventures like hiking or trampoline parks or whatever, point is, it's going to be an amazing year because we try to make it one. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and have a happy, safe New Year. Gotta look at the script because I don't know what I'm reading. And I will see you all in 2021. Stay awesome, guys, and as always, rock on.